Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of an RPG Maker User. This is episode 4, and today we'll be talking about my problems with creative game development writer's block sort of thing. So, way back in the day, it all started with after the development of Brony Quest 2, and at the time I was a fledgling RPG Maker user, and I was fresh off the two biggest hits on my account, and that's mostly because Brony Quest When Nazis Attack and its sequel, Brony Quest 2, were made during the height of popularity of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. You can get the two games to this day, albeit Brony Quest 2, due to an oversight, is unbeatable, and because I no longer own RPG Maker VX, I do not have access to the original files. The original source files have been deleted a long time ago, but there is prototype data on my Google Drive account, so if need be, I can just look through that. So after Brony Quest 2, I worked on Brony Quest 3. And that game sort of went through development hell because I figured, hey, I'll set a deadline for myself. Then I'd miss the deadline and push it ahead. And I was working on this game for so long that I eventually got bored with it and I canceled it because I couldn't be bothered to finish it. And the deadline upon deadline just friggin' sucked for me. And so I went, and this created this sort of mentality where if I had an idea for a game, I have to rush the game before I get bored and I lose interest. So what I did was, so there was a long time between the end of development of Brony Quest 3. Actually, never mind, because I made games during that time, so never mind. So after the Brony Quest 3's essential development failure, I sort of bounced around from game to game. I made Picklehaube Project 5, which is based off this fanfic series that I made, which is self-insertion where I'm a Mary Stu that fights against the guy who's in charge of my school at the time, whose entire character is being Jewish. No, I am not kidding, but I'm not that kind of person. I just really didn't like him because I didn't really like that school. So, yeah, there's a reason why I've sort of not removed the game from Game Jolt. I just hidden the game page. So it's a secret shame that feel shameful for, but things happen. So whatever. Then I made OGMS, which was sort of a spin-off of the Picklehaube series, where me and Yukari Yakmo get stuck in a Oasis-esque game program, which was sort of a prototype for Numbskull Monogatari, in the sense that it was a collectathon in which there were different levels with different objectives that you had to complete, where you earned items, and then you used those items to unlock new levels that you can use to do stuff. And it was just all these hidden little coin things that you got. And some of them are hidden in the towns and stuff. There's different endings, and you can unlock either, as an unlockable character, either George Carlin or Robin Williams. Yep. That's a thing. So anyway, continuing forth, I know the volume kind of spiked up there. I saw it on my Audacity program. But, and then there was After the Escape, which was sort of like a game that takes place as a bad ending to Picklehaube Project 5, where I self-inserted my younger brother Victor into as the main hero, and it also served as a Phantasy Star crossover featuring Alice Landale, because Phantasy Star 1 is best Phantasy Star. And you can fight me on that one, Sega fans. Then after that, there was sort of a lull between because at that point I was sort of in between projects. And this is really the start of me having a tough time figuring out what I want to do, because I'll have this great idea for a game. I will then work on it thinking, oh, I'm going to be working on this as my new project, which I'll definitely see to completion. But then over time, I'll get bored of it, or I'll spend an extended amount of time away from the project and then getting back into it, and I'm not really happy with it, and I just stopped working on it. And that's sort of a problem I had through the DevRo years and even now, but we're going to get to the present. But then MV came out and I made the Legend of Zune series. Legend of Zune 3, just like Brony Quest 3, I had a hard time developing. So that got canceled, and then that's when I started bouncing from project to project. All these projects that I've made between The Legend of Zune 3 and Numbskull Monogatari and all those sort of single not self-reliant, what's the word? These sort of self-contained RPG Maker adventures that only lasted one game. So there was this game that I made. The only one that really survives between is this game called Marpon, which is sort of this game about this sort of where the spirit of Karl Marx and who meets with the Shinto goddess Amaterasu, whom the both remake Japan into their own image, where the emperor is in charge of like this communist sort of utopian Japanese society, and you play as this guy. And then America, which this takes place in the far off future, where America is this large capitalist corporation that tries invading. You then fend off the invasion, and as revenge for the invasion, you then invade them. This game was meant to be my first commercial outing, but didn't really get far into development outside of the first act. So there is some playability to this game, but not much. Then I made the Legend of Zune series. Then I made no, this was after the Legend of Zune, sorry. Then I made Numbskull Monogatari, which got featured in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, which I'm proud of, and you can still see it to this day. Another thing, this is unscripted, so if I'm rambling, then yeah, sorry. So then I took a hiatus because I made this Toho fan game that was an absolute stinker. And I sort of got turned off to RPG Maker until a little after I came to DevRo. And at DevRo, I started thinking up of new games, and then that's how the pre-production for Tales of Yore sort of came about as the first commercial game. And then I made Tales of Yore, and then I took a long-ass break. The only thing I really did was release updates for Tales of Yore. And then I made this game called Final Varsity, which was a parody of Final Fantasy. And the reason that I wanted to make a parody of Final Fantasy was because a parody of Final Fantasy was originally going to be one of the seasons. I think it was originally meant to be the real season 3 to Tales of Yore, but because I'd figured a Pokemon parody would be more interesting, I decided to go with that instead, and thus the Final Fantasy parody got rehashed into its own game. Oh yeah, by the way, with The Legend of Zune and the commercial games, they sort of form a shared universe, so this will be called the Zuneverse. And Final Varsity is the first game that takes place in the Zuneverse. In fact, the Zuneverse starts with the PC-98 Toho games, but after the 5th Toho game that was on the last one released on the PC-98, Mima escapes, goes to the CERN laboratories, Reimu and Mersa chase them, and Mima just pretty much wrecks the Large Hadron Collider, essentially destroying the universe as we know it, creating a god of who represents, sort of who represents anachronism or anarchaic time, and he rebuilds the universe in which all historical events are mixed. So which explains why the Legend of Zune not only takes place in the modern present, where Zune is making modern Toho games, but also exists at a time when the Dreamcast was discontinued, meaning post 2001, but still during the heyday of the 8-bit microcomputer craze of Britain, which implies it's also taking place in the 1980s at the same time. So essentially the 2010s, the 2000s, and the 1980s were happening at the same time, which is bizarre. But anyway, yeah. So after Tales of Yore and Final Farsity, I was sort of in between projects, and I made a lot of projects in the meantime. Like, I made this Hoi 4 Phantasy Star mega crossover series with that involved Final Fantasy VII, which Hitler infuses himself with materia, and Hirohito is a playable character, as well as Mussolini, but and Hitler's kind of like this Sephiroth figure, so go figure. I think I still have the original files for it on my laptop, which, I want to use, but the only problem is that I bought a replacement AC adapter from a replacement charge cable from Amazon, and the thing gets really hot after a while, and I don't want to burn my house down, so that's that. So then I left Devro because a student tried to sexually assault me. So I left because of that. So then I came home, and I'm home for the past few months. I'll be moving into a group home in the next few months. So what happened is that I'm home, and I had a bunch of free time, and now I can't stick to a project for the life of me because I've already went through two projects that I sort of got bored with. Another project killed itself, committed die because the file's corrupted, because MV and MZ can't run for shit on my computer without causing the audio to hang and my computer to freeze. Yay! Katakoa makes my computer feel good. No, it doesn't. So the first game that I failed to make was Yomu's Bizarre Adventure, and I made the game I started development on the game a week or two before the Toho character popularity contest for 2020 came out. The results came out, and lo and behold, Yomu won. So it was like, oh geez, I gotta better work on the game while the iron's hot. And I got bored with the project, so I canceled it. Then I made Fantastisch Densetsu, the first JRPG that takes the German word for fantastic, and sticks it against the Japanese word for fantasy. So it really means fantastic fantasy, and it's about historical figures faffing about in an RPG environment. Like, in order to get the first vehicle, which is a boat, you have to go to this guy named Karl Donitz, who was, by the way, the admiral of who was in charge of all the U-boats, who's supposed to have a dinner date with Theodore Roosevelt, but Theodore Roosevelt's fighting a dragon in the middle of the woods, so you go defeat the dragon. He forgets that he's supposed to hunt food for his dinner with Donitz, so Donitz is like, I'll order Chinese food, here's your boat. So, yeah, and then I got bored with the project, so now I'm in between projects, and I feel absolutely stuck. In fact, my best idea, which I had today, as of this recording, was a game in which Trump refuses to leave the White House after Biden wins the 2020 election, and does so by nuking the entire world. Mr. Conductor gets advanced warning of this, tries to warn Sir Topham Hatt. The island of Sodor gets obliterated, but then the island of Sodor gets remade, in which all the the locomotive characters are turned into humans, and you play as a humanized Thomas the Tank Engine. and Trump is like a little Dragon Quest-esque demon villain thing, then you have to stop him. So, yeah, and it's an idea that I do not want to pursue because it feels incredibly stupid. And humanizing Thomas characters feels gross to me because that sounds like somebody who, with a DeviantArt account, would do. And that's why I haven't been able to make a game for the past few months. As much as I want to make a game, and I did, I had actually the Legend of Zune remake before it frickin' yeeted itself because RPG Maker doesn't really like to work well with my desktop. It was actually like mostly complete. All I had to do was add the first final boss and the second final boss, and then all the post-game junk. Go figure. So, yeah, that's essentially a small history of me making games and why I can't focus on projects, even though I barely talked about not focusing on things, proving that I can't focus at all. Thank you. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.